Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this month's webinar. My name is Ben Driggs. We have DJ Bassett on the call with us. I can see on our attendee list, we already have a whole bunch of people on the call, and we really appreciate your taking a few minutes with us each month as we talk about different issues related to finance. We are Navigate Financial. We help companies with their 401k plans, and we help the company, we help employees who work at those companies. We also have a private client, personal, clients that are not tied necessarily to a 401k plan. We're located in Salt Lake City, Utah, and we really enjoy talking with people about finances and sharing different tips that we've learned over the years. Just as a little background, we have put together a series, a program, if you will. We call it the Navigate program, but it's basically helping people navigate these different areas of finances because we want to bring a holistic view to finances rather than just investing or just budgeting or just insurance. We really want people to feel comfortable with all the different areas, recognizing that it's difficult to become familiar with all of them. And that's kind of what we're going to be talking about today. How do you put it all together? So that's just a brief introduction of who we are. We do these monthly webinars, and we're really glad for you to be on the call. So with that introduction, today we're going to be talking about accounts management. This is, again, we have 11 different segments that we talk about regularly. This is one of them. And as we put together the webinar, my original vision was to focus on how we can help people to organize their information, because most people have their finances and their accounts in many different places. So the gist of it, the original thinking was, how can we be talking about greater organization? And yes, we're going to be talking about that today. But as we really started to develop the presentation, the webinar presentation today, I realized consolidation is a central theme about accounts management. So we'll be talking about consolidation. We will also be talking about diversification and what that means. So let me go here. DJ is going to be monitoring the.
Yeah, I was about to hop in there. Just a reminder for everybody that is on the call, you are able to submit questions into the Q&A function. You should have that among your buttons down at the bottom of your webinar screen. I will be monitoring that. I'll be taking a look at that. So, submit them throughout the presentation. There'll be a couple spots where we may stop or Ben may turn to that. So as things come up, we want to answer them as they go along. So anyways, yeah.
Okay, so we're going to talk about diversification for a few minutes. We understand the concept of diversification, everyone on the call, but we want to talk about that in the context of financial assets and financial accounts. So we want to communicate the notion that just having more accounts does not necessarily translate to diversification. So a lot of people say, well, I'm diversified because I have some assets at this place and this place and this place. So you have a 401k account, an IRA, and I don't know, maybe a brokerage account. Well, those are diversified by virtue of different types of accounts. But what we want to really look at is not the different types of accounts or where those accounts happen to be. So they say, well, I have money at Fidelity, I have money in my 401k at Vanguard, and then I have a brokerage account at E-Trade. So I'm diversified. So it's really not the accounts, how they're titled, or where they are held, but the diversification is based on the assets themselves. So if you have money at 3 different places and all of the money is invested in, say, US stocks, it doesn't matter that they're in 3 different places. If the US stocks go down, you'll lose money. And if they go up, you'll make money. So the diversification, when we talk about proper diversification, we're talking about the assets and the investments themselves. So you want to be thinking about, again, the big 3: stocks, bonds, cash. That's really what the diversification concept is about. We want some money in stocks, some bonds, and cash. And what is that allocation? Stocks for growth, more up and down, but they make more money over time. Bonds more conservative, but they also in the last few years have struggled because of high interest rates. Cash, when is it appropriate to have cash, etc. So this is what we're talking about with diversification. So what was I going to say here? A notable exception on bullet number 4 is diversification in the bank. So let me mention here, a lot of people say, oh, I would like to have my money at different financial institutions. So you should feel comfortable having your money at one brokerage firm or financial institution if those investments are properly diversified. Just so you understand, like our custodian happens to be Schwab, but you've heard of Morgan Stanley, Merrill Lynch, Wells Fargo Advisors. These different investment firms act as brokerage firms. They do not actually own the money. They are simply just acting as an intermediary. The actual ownership is what you own inside the account. So let's say you have an account and you own shares of Costco in that account. That brokerage firm, Fidelity, for example, is helping you to organize that Costco holding and another mutual fund or whatever. Fidelity doesn't really go out of business. Fidelity is simply being an intermediary. So the risk that Fidelity acting as a broker going out of business is very small. The risk is Costco. The risk is what is happening in the investments. So I just wanted to mention that point. I don't know that I did a great job, but we can move on for the sake of time. By the way, on this last point, with banks are a little different. So let's say you have a lot of money and you put it at one bank. Banks actually could go out of business. It's unusual, be a very extreme situation. And there are some basic protections, but if you have a lot of money and a bank goes under, there could be some risk. But you know, that would be for people who have lots of money. There are some remedies and ways to work around that. But generally, you should feel comfortable having your money at one institution, but focus on diversification of the assets, the investments themselves. This is here, well-intentioned diversification may increase the risk of overlap. So you think, oh, I have my money in 3 different places, but what you don't understand is the investments are the same. You know, if the investments are the same in all 3 cases, you really don't have the investment exposure. We don't do it very often, but we can sometimes run an overlap analysis, and we look at what is in the different people's in your accounts in different places, and we can say, oh, your portfolio actually owns Amazon 5 different times. So you actually have a lot of redundancies built in the portfolio that you may not think about. So we're going to switch here. Any questions here, DJ? Any questions so far?
No, nothing in the chat quite yet.
Okay. Don't be shy if you have any questions. So we're going to switch to consolidation next. Now, consolidation is the art of bringing things together when does it make sense? When does it not make sense? I would say in general, it makes sense to consolidate your assets, and we'll be talking about that for the next few minutes. Fewer accounts typically makes things easier. Fewer, online accounts that you have to interact with, fewer statements, fewer fees, fewer chances of error, easier to manage. And also what happens when we work with people and we say, hey, let's put together a retirement analysis. Sometimes we're pulling from lots of different places, which is fine. But again, it's a little more complicated to put that together when you're going through a planning process. So when it comes to planning, it's advantageous to have a more simple, consolidated approach. And also from an emotional standpoint, it's my experience, and I think this is somewhat intuitive. When we have fewer things to keep track of, it lowers our stress level. So we want life to be simple. We want life to be stress-free and having lots of accounts. But what happens is as life goes on, let's say we work at a company A and we have $5,000 in the 401k and then we quit or we get terminated, we move. Now we start another one. Time goes on, now we have accounts here and here and here. We're now probably starting we're not getting, it starts to be a little more complicated. We start to forgive things. There's a note here. A lot of people forget about old accounts. It's difficult to have them built into a retirement plan. And so just as the accounts are disjointed, our investment strategies become disjointed, our focus becomes disjointed, and overall, that kind of weakens us. So we want to have things orderly, concentrated, so we're really focused. I give this example with sports or other things requiring a lot of focus. Typically, when we can concentrate and have fewer distractions, we are in a better position to have better outcomes. Leakage here is a continuing leakage and cash outs. That means when we move from one company to another one, let's say that we have $1,000. In fact, I've done this myself many times over my career. Someone will say, oh, what do I do at my old company? My old 401k, I have like $900 in that account. What should I do with it? I myself say, you know what? Just cash out. Who cares? Just make your life easy. Mathematically, that is not good advice. The advice should be, concentrate, roll that in, combine, don't take a tax hit, don't take a penalty. But even I, understanding these concepts, when you have these little accounts out there, I'm like, just cash out, move. So again, I have a penchant for simplification and minimalism. So leakage is when we are drawing our accounts away and cashing out perhaps earlier than we should. So we want to avoid that. And then the flip side of that increases our chances that the money stays invested. And consolidation programs, I think this is an interesting statistic. When you're consolidating, you are less likely to cash out.
We did have a question about the previous slide. I just looked and it did come.
Yeah.
If we want to pop back one,
this one or one more
before the leakage. Yeah. So going back here, this is real quick, and on this one, I know you talked about investments and diversification. You mentioned it on this consolidation and about how the more consolidated things are, you want to make sure, if they're not, then, they're not, diversified. So the question here is, does Navigate Financial review my investments to confirm that they're diversified? Or how, I guess we can add on to that and say, how do we do that? And I think, it ties into here.
Yeah, it does tie to we do that, of course. That's an important part of our job. But let's say you have different relationships with different advisors or different financial institutions. It does become more difficult. So yes, while we're looking at what we see, we don't see the whole picture. So our ability to help you would be diminished to the extent that we can't really see the whole picture. So we say, oh, you're young and you have an aggressive profile. Let's put you in, stocks and overweight stocks. Well, what we don't know perhaps is that you're trying to save up for a house and you have no money saved up at the bank. And we would probably have that conversation anyway. And as part of our conversations with people, we're always talking, what else do you have? Where is that? How's that being invested? So that actually is something just over the years we've learned to always bring that into the conversation, because people typically have several accounts at different places and it's hodgepodge. So hope that answers that question. Yeah, I think we touched on this. Better portfolio management, fewer pieces to keep track of. Yeah, from an investment management standpoint, it really is helpful to keep things organized. DJ and I had a conversation yesterday. We're working with a new client, and they're getting ready to retire, and they have some money in place number 1 and place number 2. And as they get ready to retire, it makes sense to draw from place number 1 first from a tax standpoint. And it makes sense to postpone, in this case, which is pretty typical, just a little tangent here. When you're in retirement, you typically draw down from your taxable accounts first, and then you leave your tax deferred accounts like a 401k, IRA, Roth, whatnot. You typically defer that. So this is a typical situation, typical client. And so we say we have 2 different places where this money is going to be. So we had a very clear sense, because we knew exactly where this client's money was. He has 2 accounts, a taxable account and a tax deferred account. He's getting ready to retire. So then when it comes to portfolio management, we are in a better position to help him, because we can say, oh, over the next 5 years, you're going to be draining down your taxable account. So we want that to be very conservative, because we don't want to have some market, crash, foul things up just at the very critical moment that you're trying to withdraw the money. We want to avoid that. So let's manage this more conservatively. And your 401k, you're probably not going to get that for another 5-10 years. Let's postpone that, or let's make that more aggressive. So that's a very simple example, but we see this a lot, depending on how old you are, how much money you have, and where your monies are. We're in a better position to say, okay, for this pot of money, we want this to be invested this way. For this pot of money, let's take this strategy. So there's a uniformity of strategy when we have consolidation. So that's consolidation with accounts. It's consolidation with assets. And I think that that's really kind of getting back to our original vision for this segment of accounts management is that bigger picture. We're not going to be talking about different tools on how you can do that. There are online tools to help people manage their money. We certainly encourage you to look at some of those tools so you have a better sense. But today I thought we'd talk more big picture about bigger concepts rather than practical things like that.
Also too, I would like to make a note. Ben mentioned their tools. Use us as a resource as well. If you have questions or need help simplifying or organizing accounts, give us a call too. We can be a resource. We can be, a help there. Obviously there are a number of different things and tools out there, but yeah, lean on us. If you don't know where to turn, we can definitely help guide through that conversation.
Yeah, we certainly invite that discussion. Happy to help out. And that is a good segue to the final thing. We have 10 minutes left. And just as a reminder, We're very punctual here, so you can count on us ending at the bottom of the hour. So we have, I think, 9 minutes left. We'll finish off with this because this is how we fit into this. Working with one advisor whom you trust can lead to better results. I believe strongly in this, and we're going to talk about a few reasons why we believe this is the case. One of them is that it promotes a unified strategy, which we talked about a few minutes ago. Focus, organization, we have a clear path that increases our peace of mind. We feel like, yes, we have a plan, it's organized, it makes sense, it's customized to our situation, and we have a firm of professionals who do this all the time who are guiding that process. Number two is, we'll go across the page, working with one advisor helps to avoid conflicting advice. Again, we've touched on this, but if you work with multiple advisors, which some people do, and that's fine, but then you're going to have to say, oh, this person's recommending this, which makes sense because he or she is looking at that piece, but that might conflict with what another person is saying because he or she is looking at a completely different set of data. Number three, holistic planning is only possible when one advisor sees the full picture. Yeah, I mean, in order to really be good with planning, you have to see all of it. That doesn't mean that you have to have that in the same place, but for sure, when you meet with a financial advisor, you're going to want to make sure you bring everything to the table so that there's uniformity. The fourth one, this is a little longer, and you can be reading this along. It's kind of a little different. Oh, complete little side note. Let me just say, getting back to diversification. Mathematically, let's say you have an account with $10,000. Let's say you have 3 accounts, 10,000, 10,000, 10,000. And the market goes up 5%. So it's 30,000, it goes up 5%, you make $1,500. Mathematically, do you make more money by having that all in one place? The answer is no. There's no mathematical advantage by having them together. So it's not like you have more of a compounded effect by diversifying. Just thought I'd mention that. Okay. Investors who work with a good advisor typically make more money over time. It's an interesting concept. There is a lot of data, and there's a survey that we've referenced, but I've seen several over my career. And I've also seen this anecdotally as well. People who work with good advisors actually do end up with a better result. And it's not because their like investment recommendations are that savvy or sophisticated. In fact, they're rather ordinary. Most financial advisors are no better or worse than the average what you could get by doing it yourself. So it's really not the investment skill that makes a good advisor a good advisor. Rather, the advisor typically brings more steadiness to the conversation, focuses on the planning so that when big events happen, when the market drops suddenly, or you go through a major life event, that you're not making the wrong moves at the wrong time. So that kind of care and guidance, is the reason for that difference. And it's rather significant. It's over 3% a year spread between people who work with financial advisors and people who don't. And again, if you look year to year, the advisor's not doing anything particularly unique. It's simply because that when you do it yourself, many people make big wrong decisions at the wrong time. We know it. And the most obvious example, the market tanks and people sell at the worst possible moment. I've seen that hundreds of times over the years. We know this intellectually, but when it happens emotionally, we think this time it's real. How can we get through this one? How can we get through this one? I'm going to pull my money out. And it always, now, again, maybe the next time it's going to be some problem that we've never seen and we think there's no way out of this one. We're toast. Let's sell. Statistically, you're making a big mistake, because since the beginning of the financial markets in the modern age, somehow or other, we get through it and we move up. So that's the reason why working with a financial advisor typically is in your best interest. And lastly, and I think here we have just 3 minutes left, there is more confidence. There is data. We touched on this recent one in 2024, a recent one with Northwestern Mutual. They looked at, a study that people do have more in savings. They feel more prepared. They feel more confident. But there are many other surveys that back this up. And also intuitively, people work with advisors tend to have a plan in place more often than people who don't. And that planning experience does translate to more peace of mind and better results. And lastly, working with one person simplifies the communication, avoids duplication, helps with tax coordination as well, because we talk with tax, the investment people often talk with the tax people. And so there's some tax coordination as well. Final takeaways: diversification is about the allocation of the investments, not necessarily the type of an account it's in or the location, the institution it's at. Consolidation usually makes sense, leads to better outcomes, and working with one advisor who's good, whom you trust, can typically lead to better outcomes, more peace of mind, better results. And we do invite you to give us a call, and we'd be happy to do this, as part of our regular service. We'll hear disclosures, leave there for our legal people who will be satisfied that we are properly disclosing. We will send a copy of this or post it to our website for future viewing. Here are some of the references and sources that we had for today's. And that brings us to just 1 minute to go. Any final questions before we hang up?
We didn't have any on there, so if any pop in the next minute, I'm watching here if there are any questions or comments or anything like that. One thing I did want to make note of, Ben, if you want to hop back one slide for just a few seconds, the final takeaways. Like Ben was mentioning here, that last bullet point, working with one advisor, it can lead to better results. And we saw that, the statistics that people that work with an advisor have 2 times the savings. And it's not just, they're 65, 70, retiring, and then they start working with an advisor, and all of a sudden, magically, boom, you have 2 times the savings. It typically are people who have been working with one or the same or an advisor for many, many years. Now, we're lucky to be able, with many people here on this call, to be able to work with you on the 401k. And so we invite, again, I know he mentioned this, let's talk about the accounts, but for people that are employees of companies that we work with, that's how those 2 times the savings. Now, obviously, we can't promise that that's going to happen for you, but it's the behaviors that start at an early age in your 20s, 30s, 40s, that developing that relationship with an advisor, and in this case, that you can reach out, and you do have us as a resource, with no account minimums. There's no threshold for you to meet to be able to talk with us. And that goes for, and so if anyone, on the call, reach out to us. Let's start that relationship if we haven't already. Let's get those plans in place. But it also goes for, anybody that you might know, family, friends, we are unique in the way in in that we don't have those account minimums. There's a very low threshold to be able to work with us and have us as a resource, as an advisor in Navigate Financials. So anyways, just thought it'd be worthwhile to bring up there for yourselves or for, other, it's those long relationships that will get those better results. And so we invite you to engage in that and start sooner rather than later. So
Great.
yeah.
Thank you. On that note, we'll wrap it up. Thank you all. We'll see you next month, Thursday, July 10th. I don't know what we're talking about, but we'll make sure we let you know ahead of time. Take care.